The title of this video is When Capitalism Goes Wrong. You know that I believe that capitalism is a perfect model of capitalism is when you go to the flea market and the people buying the object are looking eye to eye with the person who's selling the object. But when you're buying something or buying a service and the CEO or the person providing the service, who's in charge of providing the service, is 1,000 miles away, they don't know you, you don't know them, that's when capitalism goes wrong. What happens there, and I've worked for companies like this, is when a small company starts up, it starts up stereotypically in this case, very honest, very sincere, very devoted to the customer, their customers, very grateful and appreciative for their customers. But at some point, they do such a good job of doing all of that they earn a great reputation. They generate a lot of business. They become very successful. The executives end up taking private jets to Thailand, certain countries in Africa, or places like Amsterdam where drugs and prostitution are legal. And they end up they either have their own private jets or they charter private jets, and they all take these, they all go on these $1 million party sprees. That's sort of that's not an example of capitalism gone wrong. That's not what I'm talking about here. I mean, this is not a moral, this is not a moral statement, a statement on morality. What I'm saying is that that's the next phase of development in a capitalistic model, is extreme success. What happens after you have extreme success is you get bored with the $1 million parties. You think that there's got to be more, there must be more, there can be more. So then what they start, in my experience, what they start inevitably doing is they start looking toward realms that are above them, and the realm that is above them is the politicians, the politics, So they start sending lobbyists to Washington or to the state capitol. And what they find out is that whereas before they had to spend $1 million to make $1 million, or maybe they had to spend $1 million to make 500,000, or they had to spend $1 million to make 5 million, whatever their business model was. Point being, they had to spend a lot of money to make a decent amount of money, right? They have a really good business model. They spend a lot of money, make a lot of money. They have a not so great business model, or they just have kind of a standard business model. They spend a lot of money and they make a little bit of money. And they're comfortable with that because that's the way they make a living, right? So, but then what happens is they go and they find out, wow, I can give this politician $30,000, which is a little tiny bit of money, right? I can give this politician $30,000 and make $10 million because the politician, directs or influences or pushes legislation in such a way as to benefit the company. They relax regulations, or they increase regulations but give them an exemption so that their competition is hamstrung. They have an advantage, whatever. A lot of it has to do with eliminating competition, but that's another story. So they find out, wow, we have one lobbyist at the state capitol, or we have one lobbyist in Washington, and look at this, we're making more money for every dollar that we spend on this initiative than we ever dreamed was possible in our regular model, right? So next year, let's not send one lobbyist to the state capitol or to Washington. Let's send 50 lobbyists, right? And it just goes on and on from there. So what happens is then the corporations technically end up being the ones writing the legislation. And that actually does happen. Corporations write the legislation, they pay the politicians to sign it. I'm not saying it always happens that way, but that does happen. So then the corporations become the government, but only unofficially. Officially, the government is still the government, but you've got this scrim between the government and the people are constantly looking to the government to fix things, but the government's not actually the government. So, and then people wonder why nothing can ever be fixed. It's because you're not dealing. It's like if your lawnmower breaks and you go in the garage and you start working on your bicycle. It's like, that's not going to fix your lawnmower, but that's what's happening here. So this is when this is capitalism gone bad. Capitalism morphs into fascism. Sometimes it's driven from the business side. Sometimes it's driven from the government side. One or the other is seeking, because, you know, the government likes not being accountable for the decisions that are made. The government likes being powerless to fix anything, because the more problems that exist, the more money they can collect to fix the problems, right? And there's always some Boy Scout in government who's actually trying to fix things. So if the government is able to fix things, you have the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts in there, not literal Boy Scouts, but you know what I'm saying, an actual good moral person who's actually sincerely trying to do their job as a public servant. So if the government is unable to fix things, literally unable, because they're not actually the ones calling the shots, that's all the better for the corrupt politicians, right? Because they don't actually have to stand up and make a difference for either good or bad. All they can just sit there and smugly say anything they want, because they know it doesn't matter what they say, because the government has no power to fix anything anyway. And then when the Boy Scout or the Girl Scout, the person who's sincerely trying to do their job as a public servant, comes up empty-handed all the time, the corrupt politician can stand up and say, well, I have a solution for the problem that they can't solve. And that solution always inevitably ends up being more taxes, more taxes, more taxes, more money, more money, more money, more power, more power, more power. And then the more money the government has, the more it costs the corporations to bribe them, because you can't bribe a person who has $1 million with $10, right? A person, you're gonna have to up the ante to get their attention the more money they have. So that's it. I'm trying to make short videos. I failed in this case. Thank you for watching. This is Capitalism Gone Bad. Except it's actually not capitalism. It's socialism. I view socialism and fascism, any type of this centralized power, control, and wealth as the institutionalization of everything bad that can go wrong in a capitalistic system. So there is no perfect system. There are no perfect people. But when you take everything that's bad about any system and institutionalize the bad, well, then obviously you're not fixing anything. You might be looking busy. You might have your marketing companies talking about how hard you're working at fixing things. You might have your marketing consultants creating marketing campaigns that talk about how much you're getting done. But you're not actually doing anything good. You're just advancing the cause of evil and the centralization of money and power, money and power, money and power, money and power. Excuse me. So that's it. Capitalism Gone Bad. Thank you for watching. Bye.